So we'll start off with the office market snapshot. We'll have the overview of the vacancy data, the Q4 status, market trends, and the tenant perspective.
Okay, thanks, Ed. So, look, the stats are fresh off the press today. So, Australian CBD office vacancy has increased overall from 12.8 to 13.5% over the 6 months to Jan 24. So, if we look across the country, most capital cities had recorded an increase. Brisbane and Canberra was fairly stable. Perth was the only one that recorded a decrease. And one of the things was vacancy for the prime office space was lower than secondary assets in every capital city, aside from Sydney and Adelaide. And there's been a lot of, press chatter about positive outlook about prime office space, but tenants should keep in mind that the trend for flight to quality in times of high vacancy, it isn't unusual. And that shift into the prime space is because landlords are needing to offer generous incentives and other various tenant benefits to attract occupiers. If we look over to New Zealand, Auckland has seen a slight decrease in vacancy and Wellington an increase, but that's due to new supply on the market. And New Zealand has also seen that same flight to quality playing a big part in occupier decision making, and along with sustainability credentials as well. So I'll just pass over to Ken.
Well, thanks, Gillian. For those of you who have joined previously, this slide will be fairly familiar to you all. However, for those of you who are new to the market update, the slide illustrates the difference between lease norms and market conditions. This slide will feature throughout the market update, and each presenter will discuss where it sits within each office sector. Regarding the office sector, lease norms are still largely drafted in favour of landlords. The ongoing challenge for tenants is to change these lease norms by incorporating tenant-friendly conditions. Too much attention gets paid to the costs and not to the lease norms, which place a greater emphasis on the transfer of risk, obligations, and guarantees back to the landlord. The market conditions, as seen in the statistics, it is very much still a tenant market. This is largely driven by a slow return to work and tenants actually right-sizing their accommodation requirements. This presents all tenants and occupants with an opportunity to take advantage of the market condition whilst challenging the lease norms and undertaking a restructure of a lease amongst other appropriate strategies. Q4 status, sublease vacancy. During the last quarter, the influx of sublease space has leveled off in the market. In situations where tenants have faced challenges in getting staff back to the office, they are opting for sublease options as it becomes more appealing, given the attractive incentives and existing fit-outs on offer. Despite the inherent risks associated with subleasing, the law of flexible lease terms and reduced occupancy costs served as a counterbalance. Nationwide, we're encountering offers with incentives ranging from 45 to 60% for subleasing, surpassing the market average of 30 to 40%. Vacancies. As noted in the earlier statistics, there has been an increase in vacancy rates across the country. Empty office spaces in lower grade buildings are increasing because tenants are choosing higher grade office buildings. These lower grade offices face the challenges, as Gillian has mentioned, as they need substantial capital upgrades to stay competitive. However, in the Brisbane and Canberra markets, they remain relatively steady, whilst there was a slight decrease in Perth due to increase in tenant demand. Landlord building. Traditionally, there has always been competition among landlords to offer the best enter-trip facilities. However, as the pool of tenants diminished, landlords are now exploring creative ways to set their buildings apart. Whilst this trend is not new, the trend is persisting as landlords have to compete against sublease alternative. There is a number of options being available on the market. With speculative fit, based on our knowledge, about 90% of the stock in the sub 1,000 square meters space is being offered with a new or existing tenant, existing fit out. What are the market trends? Flexible options. Look, due to the low utilization and the occupancy rates, there is a notable demand for flexibility. As part of the process, we recommend that all our clients explore a variety of alternatives, offering enhanced business flexibility compared to traditional lease arrangements. This may involve selecting service offices, participating in subleasing, or sharing offices with shared amenities. Given the current emphasis on costs and reduced occupancy expenses and shorter lease terms, we anticipate this trend to persist throughout the year. ESG. Buildings integrating ESG principles are gaining greater favour amongst occupants and tenants. This is attributed to the growing preference of businesses to align themselves with landlords or buildings that embrace ESG values. For instance, inquiries often revolve around the initiatives undertaken by the landlord to minimise their carbon footprint, what policies do they have in place for modern slavery, type of energy sources available to the building for the tenant, for example, green power. Business to business, like this is, we'd probably consider this outside of the lease norm, but in the current economic environment where there is a great emphasis on costs, we advise our clients to strategically explore the potential benefits that can actually arise by fostering a business-to-business relationship with landlords. This notion holds particular significance for larger tenants. It goes beyond mere space leasing. It entails establishing a partnership with the landlord, resulting in mutual advantages. The landlord secures a tenant for the buildings, and the tenants in turn enjoy additional revenue from the landlord, or an increase in revenue resulting from the commitment to the building. And lastly, going early. We advise all clients to initiate the process well in advance of their lease expiry by examining their long-term accommodation strategy to ensure it actually matches up with their business plans. For larger occupants, an integral part of the strategy involves understanding the development cycle and lease expiry cycle to avoid the potential pitfalls during unfavourable cycles. With currency vacancy rates reaching unprecedented highs, the prevailing market conditions offer an advantage window for tenants to proactively consider their options. A number of these options might include exploring the possibility of restructuring the lease, relocating within the building to another building, or potentially exercising the option term. From LPC, what are the opportunities available to the tenant? So what we've done, I've actually highlighted two opportunities which we consider advantageous for the tenant in this current climate. Lease restructure before expiry. Again, this is probably similar to the market trend of actually going early. The current market does actually provide all tenants with an opportunity to take advantage of the current market conditions and undertake a restructure of the lease or considering a relocation. Premises due diligence and negotiation. So this actually entails conducting a thorough due diligence on the premises or building to verify the accuracy of the representations actually made by the landlord. For instance, if your fit-out design necessitates a specific capacity of fresh air or water, we consistently recommend that our clients engage a consultant during the heads of agreement stage to ensure that the services are aligned with the intended purpose and the representations actually made by the landlord. In cases where there are discrepancies identified, it's actually critical to incorporate these requirements in the heads of agreement, which in turn will make its way into the lease. This essentially establishes a legal obligation with penalties on the landlord, ensuring that the landlord actually provides you with the necessary services as represented. Addressing these issues after the ink has dried can be quite costly. Whilst not important, it just becomes more challenging to enforce these obligations on the landlord.